Welcome to the Move Freely podcast, where you will learn skills that help you move freely in every aspect of your life. In studio today, I have with me Troy Mcteer. He is a master coach specializing in emotional burnout. Welcome, Troy.
Thank you, Courtney. How are you?
Very well, very well. So, Troy, you obviously are aware that the theme we're working with at the moment is picking up the pieces. And so, in this podcast today, perhaps you will be giving us some information or some techniques or skills on how we can pick up the pieces in our own lives. So, before we jump into this, I would love to hear from you how you arrived at this point of being a master coach that specializes in emotional burnout. What has brought you to this point, and what gives you the experience to be guiding people through the same processes?
Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Courtney. So my experience in emotional burnout or stress started when I was very young, and I spent my life, just a brief, short sort of summary. I spent my life trying to please other people. I spent my life trying to do the right thing in what others believed that I should be doing, or in the way that they were guiding me, that they thought was obviously best for me. They weren't doing anything wrong. And I felt myself very disconnected from myself. I didn't know who I was throughout school, throughout university, and during my working career. So what happened was that I had no way of dealing with these emotions. I had no way of understanding what these emotions actually meant. Because when I was a child, and I think that people can relate to this, we get told things like boys don't cry and little girls should be seen and not heard. Now, this is a conditioning that happens. Or our feelings are dismissed, or they are invalidated. And when we feel an emotion like anger or sadness or emotional hurt, and we get told by someone an authority figure, someone that we trust or believe in, that we shouldn't feel this way, we shouldn't be angry about this, we shouldn't be sad about this, we don't know how to deal with that. So we think that we are wrong in feeling this way. So we start to suppress emotions. And this is what I did. I suppressed my emotions. And when you start to suppress emotions, those emotions build up. And on a bit more of a technical thing, an emotion is just a chemical. You have a thought, and then you release a chemical into your body, which produces a reaction with every cell in your body. So emotional burnout is actually a physical, chemical thing that happens inside your body. And throughout my life, I had no way of dealing with this because we aren't taught at school. No one teaches how to deal with emotions. It's all intellectual. And what happened with me is I started to slip into excessive drinking, binge drinking, and using drugs to deal with this, until it got so bad that I slipped into a depression, a serious depression, clinically depressed. I was diagnosed with clinical anxiety. I was diagnosed with bipolar, and I was diagnosed with clinical depression. To a point in about 2019, I had my first suicidal ideation where I actually thought I was going to go ahead with it. And if you knew me, like I don't come across as someone who is depressed. I come across as this very jovial, outgoing person. And this scared the shit out of me. Okay, so I spoke to my fiance. I said, "Listen, this is what is happening," and she got quite scared. And I decided that my life had to change. I got to a crossroads where I didn't know how to deal with what I was going through, and I didn't want to take my own life. So what I did was I asked for help. I checked myself into treatment, and got treatment for depression and for drug abuse, drug addiction. And this is the process that I went through. I went through such a deep process of emotional burnout and then unconscious escapism, trying to avoid these feelings, which I was suppressing, that it ended me, it got me to a place where I had no other option but to ask for help. And the I want to say it's the human beings, right? We aren't taught how to deal with emotions. So the best way that we know how is to escape, be it through drinking, binge eating, exercise, overworking, anything to distract us from these emotions because they're so painful. So this experience taught me how dangerous it was to allow these emotions to fester. And I decided that if I got through this and out of this process, I would help people in my life overcome these things, because once you understand how to overcome these emotional triggers and reactions, your life changes. So that is what I'm doing now. This is why I'm doing this work that I'm doing, because I understand that people don't need to suffer. They don't need to be in pain. There's simple techniques and ways that you can use to bring yourself out of these dark places. And we sometimes need the dark to see the light.
Absolutely. What a beautiful journey up until now, then.
Amazing.
In fact, I have been, every coach has a coach themselves. So I've been attending coaching, and I have realized if you don't address things that happened to you when you were younger, or rather understand what happened and how that impacts you today, you will experience anxieties, discomforts, not being true to who you are as a person, and not being transparent with who you are. But what I'm actually hoping that we can chat about today, Troy, is three things. First of all, how do we become aware that we're heading towards emotional burnout? And I'll go through these again. And then, how do we become aware of these emotions? And how do we deal with these emotions when they do start to come up? Because obviously, many of us are having to pick up the pieces in our own lives. We have lost loved ones, whether it's through death or divorce or breaking up with people. We may have lost our jobs, our businesses, the homes over our head. So uncertainty is rife at the moment, and many of us are left behind having to pick up the pieces and think, how do we rebuild our lives from nothing, or what seems to us at that moment to be nothing? So perhaps you can start off with sharing with us, how do we identify that we are falling down this rabbit hole, or that we're heading towards emotional burnout? What are the signals?
Okay, so I love this because this brings awareness to what's actually going on. And once you're aware of something, you're in a position to accept it as a process, and then you are in a position to change it. So the first thing I believe is when you realize or you notice that you're becoming reactive emotionally to any situation or being triggered by something, and it'll be a pattern, something that triggers you over and over again. Okay. For me, it would be, oh, let me just think of a good one. There are quite a few, but for me, it would be someone saying something to me that was not directed at me, but I always felt attacked personally, as if the world was out to get me, and I was in a complete victim mode. So when you reacting emotionally and you feel like a victim, those are two signs, definite signs that something's about to happen, that you're on this downward spiral. Okay. And with that victim mode comes blame as well. When you start blaming things outside of you for your reality, for your results in life currently, it's a sure sign that things are about to get worse. Okay. And then when you avoid confrontation, when you avoid having those conversations with someone where you know this person's doing something or is doing something that's causing a reaction inside of you, and you avoid not addressing that. People obviously come up with people pleasing. This is this term that everyone's using. People
Yes,
pleasing. I'm trying to please people. And when you notice yourself doing that, ask yourself, why are you doing that? Are you trying to get approval from them, right? Or are you just being this good person? Because generally, people pleasing is you just trying to get approval from them. So in my own life, I spent years trying to please people over and over again, not knowing that they actually couldn't really see me for me, right? They were only seeing a reflection of themselves in me. But that, I mean, we can go deep into that some other time. But but this people pleasing is such a big thing. Giving your power away, trying to impress other people. And I spent most of my life trying to impress people, trying to fit in trying to belong. I mean, there's so many different things, but when you start to notice these things become a pattern in your life, where you're giving your power away, where you're a victim to everything things are happening to me. Oh my God, woe is me. I mean, I was there for years. Everything was happening to me, and the world was out to get me. The world's a very scary place when you have a belief that the world is out to get you. So when you notice these things, notice that you're giving your power away and you're actually flooding your system with these stress hormones. And the stress hormones are, I mean, adrenaline and cortisol, norepinephrine, and there's a host of other ones, but those are the sort of three main ones. And when you have a thought that stresses you out, you release these stress hormones into your body, and your body's in a state of survival. There's no time to think. There's no time. I mean, think about, say you get angry, and I mean, there's a number of behaviors that we show when we're angry. So you throw a glass, or you shout at your partner, or you shout at a colleague, or a
Or you
friend.
freeze, or you go silent.
You go silent and you just hide, and you don't say anything. You don't confront that situation in a resourceful way, right? And after 10 minutes or 20 minutes after you've had time to sort of come back to yourself, you'll say, oh my God, that wasn't me. Why wasn't it you? Because you actually are not acting as yourself. You've come so far away from yourself. And the more you do this, you become disconnected from yourself. And every time this happens, this pattern goes over and over again. It's like a negative thinking spiral, they say, like a runaway train. You have one little carriage, and then you have another thought, and then that links onto it, and that links onto it, and it goes on. And if you don't intervene, it's going to lead you into this emotional burnout of suppressing these emotions, not voicing what you're feeling, not telling people how you are experiencing them, and putting your boundaries in place. Boundaries also another big one. I mean, there are a lot there. I don't know if you want to summarize there, but I said a few things there.
Interestingly enough, just relating to the flood of the hormones when you're in a stress situation, something that I found interesting is what we call an amygdala hijack. So an amygdala is obviously part of the brain, and when we're in high stress situations, as you've just mentioned, the brain secretes cortisol. So a nice example is a snake jumps out of you. You don't have time to go, oh, should I move away from the snake? Should I run? Should I freeze? Your brain just instantly responds. And that is because it pumps with cortisol. So you respond in that fight, fright mechanism. Fight, fright, freeze, appease. Now, what happens is when you're in these extreme heightened states of stress, the brain spray paints itself with cortisol, shutting everything down. So you may think of a time in your life where there was, severe trauma or surprise or whatever it may be, and you will think, I cannot remember what happened in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And what that is the amygdala hijack. You're in such a high stress situation that the brain has shut down. So you cannot think, you cannot speak. That's why when you're nervous at social events, you can't think of anything to say. So interestingly enough, what you're saying is when you're severely triggered, the brain can shut down completely, and you can have these sort of out of body experiences that you find hard to recall, which is absolutely fascinating. But
100%.
what I've got from you there is when you're constantly triggered by situations that results in you either feeling like the victim or reacting in a severe way, and when you blame other people for what's happening to you as opposed to what's happening, and then you avoid confrontation. So one thing that I must say I'm quite pleased to hear is I've had a situation with a friend where I said to them the other day, you keep saying things that keep tweaking me, and they're nasty little comments. And I thought, oh, maybe I'm playing the blame game there. But I actually confronted that person, and I was like, you know what? I don't appreciate this. And so I'm quite pleased to think that maybe I'm developing, further away from emotional burnout and getting more emotionally mature about those things. So that's a great
100%. I mean, that's just showing compassion for yourself and that person as well. And that's the most powerful thing. And we can get into that later. I think your next question also was like, how do we get out of this? But compassion for yourself and for the other person. Changes the game.
Yes. And I think that compassion for the other person is something that's so interesting too. But so the
And
next question was, how do we become aware of these emotions?
okay, cool. So awareness is my favorite thing, because I was so asleep for so long and I had no idea about what was going on in my life and my body and my thoughts and my mind and my emotions. So the awareness of these things, when you're not feeling good, like awareness of emotions. Number one, the first thing to understand is that emotions are neither good nor bad. Okay, they just are. They're there. They are the language of the body, and thoughts are the language of the mind. And emotions are created by thoughts. Without thoughts, we don't have emotions. Okay, so when you're having an emotion, it's just feedback to the quality of your thinking. So if I pinch your skin right now, okay, but if I pinch you, your arm will pull away. It's your immune system telling, hey, ow, that hurts, right? If you're having a negative emotion, okay, it's your immune system inside you saying, ow, stop it, that hurts, okay? So first things first is that they aren't good or bad. They're just feedback. They are communicating with it, with us, right? And our thoughts. So first step would be to ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Because I found that people can't even name their emotions. And when they do, they have this overwhelming awareness of, oh, wow, this is what I'm actually feeling. I've now put a label on it, because human beings like to label. We like to label things. That's what I'm feeling. There's a name behind it. Cool. Once you understand what you're feeling, okay, and you're aware of that, you're in a position, as I said before, to accept it as a part of yourself or to change it and not suppress it. Because when you suppress these emotions, you're avoiding dealing with them. So by becoming aware of them, when you are emotionally reactive, instead of just dismissing them, ask yourself, what am I feeling now? And sit with it. Actually sit with it, and let it sort of, ask yourself the question, like, why am I feeling this? What thought preceded this? Okay. And then when you start to go there, right, you start to see what the source of this emotion is. Um, but yeah, courts, it's just literally about, as you said, how do you become aware of it? You listen to yourself. When you're feeling pain, when you're feeling emotional pain or stress, stop and just take a second. It's because we're so busy being busy these days. I mean, how many times do you hear people going, oh, how's your day? Oh, busy, busy, busy. You're not busy. Simplify your life. Like, and they haven't got time to actually spend with their emotions. Like, emotions are the most important thing in the world. They are the source of everything. 90% of disease, and mainstream doctors agree with this, 90% of disease is from stress, hormones. So when you start to identify your emotions, you can actually start to heal yourself physically from this, or avoid diseases later in life. That's a whole other story. But the key here is just is when something happens and you're feeling triggered, ask yourself, what am I feeling now? Because no one asks that question. And this is how you become aware of these emotions, or aware that you are about to hit an emotional burnout, that you're about to hit a negative thinking spiral. When you ask yourself the question, always ask, like, one of the biggest things we don't get to ask ourselves. We're always asking other people. We're always looking for external validation or external justification, asking someone else, what should I do with my life? Should I date this girl? Should I date this guy? Should I take this job? What do you think about this business idea? Ask yourself. Like, go and, like, have a shower, put your eyes up, relax, have a swim, have a bath, and ask yourself these questions and start to become connected to yourself. Um, so
I
yeah,
couldn't I couldn't agree with you more in terms of asking yourself the question and identifying the emotions. So powerful, because most of the time we have these triggers and we don't understand what the trigger is and what the emotion is, and so we can't cure that cure it, in inverted
yeah,
commas, for the next time. We can't address that issue and avoid it the next time. And
mm,
what really alarms me here is how often, young men or young boys were told boys don't cry. And I always hear my husband's friend saying, we did what the typical man thing does, and we locked that emotion away and that issue away, and we put it away so we never had to address it. And I
Mm-hmm.
just think there's a myriad of issues that come out of that. First of all, problems with communication in relationships, whether it's, personal, social, or professional relationships. You never learn how to address conflicts correctly, and you don't learn how to resolve them as well. The other
100%. That's huge. What you just said there. That's huge. People need to, like men especially, locking things away leads to unconscious escapism where they just start to drink. How do men deal with, not at all, this is a generalization, but how do most men deal with, their emotions? They go to the bar, they have a couple of beers with their mates, and they laugh about it. Oh, stop it. Oh. They dismiss it. Again, they dismiss the feelings, not because of their fault, because they've been brought up like that and conditioned to dismiss feelings. So what you said there is huge.
and whether they go to the bar and they drink and they laugh about it, or what I've also seen with other men is they drink until they cry, until
Yeah.
eventually they can break down that or forget about the beliefs that said, you can't cry and you can't talk about emotional things, and then you see the tears roll down, which is,
Yeah.
good but unhealthy, that it has to be through a vice like alcohol or drugs or whatever to get you to that point. Then the other aspect of it is that, by constantly having to push emotions down, they're never going to stay away forever. These emotions will always rear their heads and they will always be triggers again. So it couldn't be more destructive to human beings to say, those emotions aren't validated and let's lock them away and we don't have to deal with them, because unfortunately, you will deal with them. And I was
Yeah.
speaking to another coach, a recovery coach, who said, you either have discomfort now for comfort later on, or you have comfort now for discomfort later on. So you make the decision.
I like that.
So,
Very, very, very important that.
yes,
Nice awareness to have.
yes. So ask yourself, what am I feeling? And just using a personal story for me, when I feel like I'm triggered and I know I'm getting triggered because, my heart starts to pump and I start to breathe deeper, and my husband says my face starts to get red and angry. I know the triggers are coming. I find by saying, I'm feeling triggered, I'm having a response right now because of this. And because of what happened to me previously, that is why I'm having this. So to say to my husband, Jeff, I'm feeling triggered because you're wasting money, for example, and that makes me think back to times where I may have not had enough money. That tells him, that also gives him the context with how to deal with me in that situation. So instead of me trying to resolve it on my own, there's a unit. So, if you are in a partnership, again, social, professional, personal, intimate, to tell people why you're feeling triggered helps them understand and helps you work more as a unit together.
Voicing those feelings, like you just said, is so important, especially in relationships. But what you said about in business as well, I actually recently did some work with some clients and or some people, it wasn't actually clients, but what they said was that how they open up every board meeting was they ask everyone in the boardroom, all the directors, how are you feeling? What's going on in your life right now? Before they start to check in, because you don't know what's happened that night before. Maybe their kid's sick and they're in hospital. Maybe they've just lost their mom or their dad. And they check in, and that humanizes it, not just this hardcore business thing. And this is where I think everything is going into this emotional intelligence age. And when we start to understand where people are emotionally, and we can communicate from that human level with compassion, like you said now with your partner, right? You guys can have way more open and free conversations because you understand where each other are in that moment and why you are triggered, and not in a place of judgment, but in a place of understanding. And that's key.
Yes. And, if there wasn't that context, Jeff might think, I'm a typical crazy woman or whatever he wants to say. Whereas when you actually give people the context for how you're feeling, there's far more understanding and compassion towards that person.
100% Courts.
And, interesting that you said about the movement into the emotional age. So we were in the technological age. We're now moving into the emotional age, which is fascinating. So all those
Hmm.
soft skills that were previously perceived as what the name says, soft, which irritates me to no end because I teach soft skills and they're the hard skills you use every day.
100%.
We're seeing in a lot of corporates and a lot of organizations this movement towards emotional leadership. It's not this capitalist, autocratic, dictatorial style of leadership now. It's almost a leadership that grows from the ground up instead of from the top down. So now that we know how to become aware of these emotions, how do we deal with them? How do we address them and, again, cure them or improve our responses, our reactions, or avoid emotional burnout going forward?
Okay, cool. So because we've been, or because we've suppressed these emotions for so long and avoided them, right? We've abandoned ourselves. Okay, we, like, human beings cannot even sit with their emotions. Okay, when you abandon your emotions, you actually abandon yourself. So what we all need to do is actually is be present with those emotions, because when you're present with your emotions, you're present with yourself, right? You get to understand what you're feeling, and what you're feeling is what you're experiencing in life. There's nothing outside. Like, your quality of life is based on your emotional state, right? So there's nothing. So not your results, not if you're sitting on a yacht in Monte Carlo. You could be depressed and your quality of life is terrible, or you could be on the side of the road, with nothing, and you've just received something from someone and you're smiling because you've now got food. So your quality of life is in the state all the time. So to become present with those emotions and understand them, okay, and allow them to, and allow yourself to feel them, because we always get told don't feel that way, right? When you can feel the feelings of whatever it is, good or bad, remember, they aren't good or bad. Remember, they're just guidance, giving you feedback to the quality of your thinking always. So when you start to be present with those emotions, okay, you get to understand yourself a bit more. You get to reconnect with yourself, and when you reconnect with yourself, you are less reactive, and you can respond to situations rather than being triggered emotionally and then reacting and causing some problem within that relationship. So that's the first step, or the first thing that I would say, is to really become present and make sure that you're not abandoning yourself, because when you become present, you reconnect with yourself. Then there's a beautiful thing that I like to do called the physiological sigh. Okay, which we can do now. I'll show you now, and it's a beautiful thing. So human beings, when we are really like crying, when you like really crying, Courts, and you like in that ugly cry, the girls call it like ugly crying, and you'll do like that double sigh, that double breath, like you know like there's like two like breaths. So this is an unconscious physiological thing that your body does to try and calm you down. Okay, we all do it. We've all done it at some point in our life. So if your body's doing that unconsciously, remember, your unconscious mind and your body is got this amazing intelligence that heals and creates your entire, your livers, your organs, your cardiovascular system. There's so much going on, your brain, that is working behind the scenes. So if your body's doing that unconsciously, it must mean it does something to you. So I researched this. It's called the physiological sigh, and it's just, you take 2 deep breaths in through your nose, and then you sigh out your mouth slowly. So and you just do that a few times, 3 times, and you just see your body just completely relaxed, and you come back into a bit of homeostasis. And that's a quick little tip, that's the quickest way to do it, and one of the most effective, just not for long term, but in that moment. How do you just relax? How do you calm down in that moment? Because everyone's like, yo, Troy, how do I, like, in the moment though, when someone's really like pissed me off, or this has just happened, or I've just been fired, or I've just lost someone, I've just lost my mom or my dad or my brother, like, how do I, in that moment, physiological sigh. You do that and just calms you down, gets you to become resourceful. And this is the whole thing with this emotional burnout. When you're emotionally burnt out, you're unresourceful and you make incorrect decisions. So my work and what I do is to help people become resourceful. And this is a quick little thing to do, right? Then breathing in general, of course, is there's not enough, or there is now. There's a lot of there's a lot more breathing workshops coming out and understanding the breath, and using the breath to calm us down. So in the 1990s, there's a company called Heart Math Institute, heartmath.org. You guys can go and check it out. But they've been researching um, breathing techniques, right, for for decades now. And this one in particular, which I'll share with you, which is what I do every single day of my life. It's called brain heart coherence, which has also been, which Joe Dispenza, who is a researcher of meditation, has researched with Heart Math Institute, and they've got thousands of cases of the benefits of this one simple breathing technique and how it changes people's lives. So all it is you breathe in and out through your nose for 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out slowly your normal breathing, and 5 seconds out. You focus all your attention onto your heart, okay? And in the research, they explain why. I'll just explain to you the sort of basics. And you focus on, you focus on your heart, and then you imagine the feeling of gratitude. You think of or remember someone that you're grateful for, something in your life that you're grateful for. And this emotion of gratitude is the highest frequency emotion that we can experience as human beings. Now they measure their frequency. It's not just some woo-woo shit. Like this is actually scientific evidence that's been done. Like your emotions have a frequency, and gratitude is the highest frequency, and lust and pride, I think, have the lowest frequency. And when you are in that frequency of gratitude, and you calming your body down, right, in this brain heart coherence to make them in coherence with one another, all your systems in your body work. It actually releases all your cortisol, all your adrenaline, everything, just your stress hormones removed from your body. And then they have counted, from what they've counted, or from what they've researched now, 1,300 positive chemicals that are released into your body. You do this for 10 minutes a day. 10 minutes a day, it'll change your state completely. I do it every single morning, changes my state completely. You get access to intuition, you get access to longevity. There's all, and this is all proven. They've actually measured longevity, but we can go into that deeply.
It's called the brain heart cohesion.
Brain heart coherence.
Brain heart coherence technique, or breathing.
Yeah, breathing technique. And it's on heartmathinstitute.org. You can check them out. Or Joe Dispenza's work. He's an unbelievable man. He has taken all this woo-woo stuff, meditation and breathing and everything, and he's shown people how it actually works. So on the quantum physics level, on neuroscience level, and just really shown us how, because we need to know how. We can't just say, oh, just do this. No, show me how and why it works. So he's done that. So it's a beautiful, beautiful technique. So brain heart coherence and the physiological style.
Great. And you were talking about how people just need to sit with themselves. They need to sit with those emotions. And something that I remember from when I was much younger is I was always sort of escaping moments with myself. I was always chasing the next moment to fill, whether it was with friends or activities or what it was. And I acknowledged that this was problematic. So I went traveling, and I spent a year abroad on a beautiful sort of time away. And there I actually sat down with a journal, and I asked myself these questions, which I think are incredibly powerful. I said, why do I keep doing this? And what came up was I was afraid. Okay, so what are you afraid of? I'm afraid of who I am. Okay, so what are the aspects that you're afraid of? So then I would write down what I was scared of, or what are the qualities in myself that I didn't want to acknowledge or validate. And sometimes they're nasty qualities, sometimes they're nice qualities. and sitting with myself and a journal, and I'm a big believer in that journal, and going through these questions. What am I scared of? What things don't I like about myself? What do I like about myself? And then even going further to say, okay, so the things I don't like about myself, what if they were actually benefits? What if they were benefits that came from that? For example, sometimes I respond to someone who has been nasty to me. I respond quite quickly. Let's just say, hypothetically speaking. The benefit of that might be that I'm actually quite protective or I'm loyal. And so it's understanding that everything in life has this balance. And with good, there's bad. And what gives always takes. And to also understand that those negative emotions you perceive as negative are actually benefits in your life. And to also, if you do see that there are things about yourself that you don't like, to actually, first of all, become aware of them. And then, second of all, to say, okay, well, you know what? I actually don't like some of these things that I do. Therefore, change them. But if you hadn't sat quietly and you hadn't sat in your discomfort with yourself, you would never have recognized what it was and you would never have been able to change it. So this links back to what you were saying is sit with yourself. Don't abandon your emotions. Don't abandon yourself. Sit with your emotions and validate them and validate yourself. And once you acknowledge what those are, you can address them and perhaps change them or develop them further.
Of course, 100. Like what you said there is so key, and I just want to add something to it. Is like we don't get to heal ourselves. Well, we do, but the important thing with these emotions is that we get to integrate them. And when you integrate, because there's nothing wrong, there's nothing to fix, there's nothing to to there's no problem. It just is, right? And if you can take, I mean, everything in life is about polarities: good, bad, right, left, up, down, evil, good. But when you get to see it as just is, as a part of you, like you said, it's a part of you. Like, which parts don't you like? You integrate those parts by becoming aware of them and sitting with them and writing and journaling on that, right? And you integrate them as a part of you, okay? And once you accept that through integration, you then are in a position to change them. But without the acceptance and the integration, right, you don't get to change them, and the awareness. So you've got to have the awareness and the acceptance with the integration before you get to change it. And there's nothing to fix, and that's, I think, where people go wrong. Is like, this is like, I've got it, like I need to fix this about me, and then you start to talk down to yourself. You start to move further away from yourself. No, okay, cool, this is part of me, and now what can I learn from this? How can I grow? How can I move forward? How can I expand myself? How can I expand my awareness? And the key is to integrate it. Everyone, like in the self-development world, it's like, oh, you get to heal yourself. You don't actually, you get to integrate it as a part of you. And that, I think, is such a big reframe, because it's not like, oh, heal because it's a separate bad part of me. No, it's part of me. Let me integrate it and let me enjoy myself, and then I can change these things, these undesired parts of me.
Yes, I love that. I love that. So to integrate it and not to think that we need to heal it, because then, as you say, there's that disconnection and maybe condescending nature.
Exactly.
Interestingly enough, so I mentioned earlier that I've been attending coaching, which has been remarkable, and I encourage everyone to do it. And what I realized is that today I teach people how to feel comfortable in different environments, social or business environments. I stand up and I speak for a living, where as a child, I was chronically shy. I was
Mm.
a very small child. In fact, I was wearing 12 to 24-month clothes when I was 5. So no one
Cute.
saw me. No one saw me and no one could hear me. And yet today, I teach people how to feel comfortable, how to feel confident, and I speak for a living. And during one of the exercises, you go back and you look at sort of what's shaped you. And my husband walked in and I said, turns out the reason why I do what I do today is because I was the designated little ugly fat friend when I was a child. So we had a good giggle about that. But really that was the case. I was the little ugly fat girl. And I started talking to my coach about it, and I was like, I'm starting to get anxiety recalling these memories because I don't want to be that person again. And she said, but why is that? That little, what you think is the little ugly fat girl, is the reason why you do what you do today. It's the person that shaped you into what you actually are. So what you think is something that is a negative quality or a trait has actually been one of your greatest teachers and one of the greatest givers of life to what you pursue as a purpose and a passion in everyday life. So I thought that was a really nice addition to what you've just said. Everything actually has its place.
Everything has its place. There's no good or bad until we place our judgment onto it. That's like we
Yes.
decide what meaning we give things. So you can give that example of yours, you can give the negative meaning, or you can, or like you've changed it now into this positive meaning, and you see how beautiful it is. And we get to be the creators of our own meaning. So which means that we get to be the creators of our own lives. Like you lose a job. Is it the end of a job or the start of a beautiful new opportunity? Is it the end of a relationship or the start of a new relationship? Like we get to give the meaning to everything. So when you start to learn that, and I give meaning to everything, but unconsciously, if I'm not conscious of it, it'll become a negative thing, a negative thing. When you become aware of it, you can give new meaning to that. Guess what? Your experience changes because of life changes because why your state is different. Like think about how different you feel about reframing that into the meaning that you're given it to where you were a year ago, say, about that experience. Now the
Yes.
whole thing is framed and you feel good about it. So your life feels good, your experience of life feels good.
And I think that's an incredibly powerful thing that many people forget to do is to consciously reframe things. You can stay in the woe is me victim state, as you mentioned earlier. How do we know that we're going down the rabbit hole? We start to play that victim game. We start to blame other people for things that have happened to us. But actually, it's up to you to own that space. So
Exactly.
a couple of lessons that we get to take away from you, Troy, which has been fantastic, myself and hopefully other people, is how do we become aware that we are heading towards emotional burnout? And it's, as you mentioned earlier, we have these consistent triggers and we start to react and play this victim game and we start to blame people, avoiding confrontation instead of validating ourselves, trusting in our value, and addressing that issue with those people. Then we moved on to how do we become aware of these emotions? And as you said, you ask yourself, what am I feeling? And what we shared was to actually verbalize it. I'm feeling this. I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling caged. I'm feeling whatever it may be. Because, first of all, it helps you understand where you are. And if you're in a partnership, social, intimate, professional, it helps that partner understand the context of your behavior and of this trigger, which otherwise would seem completely crazy to that person.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, how do we actually deal with these emotions? We sit quietly, we sit with them and we allow that discomfort. We allow ourselves to address what we're feeling and what's coming up. Because once we allow ourselves to understand what it is and what is coming up, we can move into a space of integrating that and using or coming from a place of compassion to ourselves than from a place of judgment, which creates a major disconnect and moves us further away from authenticity and who we are as people.
Yes, and I think. Look, it's pretty hard to sit with your emotions, and this is what like there are easier ways, but when you sit down with your emotions and you allow and you give yourself compassion for feeling this way, right? And what I like to do myself is I actually reframe it into gratitude. So when I feel negative emotion, like overwhelmed, for example, I feel overwhelmed. I go, thank you, overwhelm, because I know I'm about to hit my next level of where I need to go. Like when I'm like, I call it in. I want more clients. I want more talks, more chats. I want more in my life, as we all do. So when I get overwhelmed, for me to, or and I get stressed again, because overwhelm is stress, right? So I'm feeling stressed again now. I become grateful for it. That gratitude changes immediately, because oh my goodness, I actually called this in. Thank goodness for this. So gratitude and compassion helps you move through that when you're sitting in those emotions. Just to add that, Courts.
Fantastic. And also, when you are feeling those emotions, some of them may be triggers from something past, but some of them may actually be telling you you're heading towards something you don't want. So change that path. If you're feeling that you're overwhelmed, then know that you're reaching your ceiling of what you can handle, and maybe adjust things.
And get excited, because there's certainly fun on the horizon. I like to have fun, Courts. So whenever I can reframe something to fun, I'd try.
Absolutely. And I suppose when all else fails, either go for the physiological sigh or the brain heart cohesion breathing technique.
Yeah, 100%.